Hello, everyone. Forest Focus as Nottingham Forest prepare to face Arsenal on Saturday. Can the Reds cause what would still be a massive upset at the Emirates, even if the teams are surprisingly level on points after 11 Premier League games? Joining me to give us the opposition view this week is Gunners fan Tom Marshall-Bailey. Tom, good to have you back. The last time you were on, we discussed Eddie Nketiah signing for Forest, so it's nice that you're coming up to discuss something that's actually happening this weekend. How are you doing?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Ready for club football to return. Every fan base, I'm sure, has just been counting down the days ever since club football stopped, just under a fortnight ago, and yeah, just can't wait for it to get back underway on Saturday. And then we've got 4 months of uninterrupted club football. So yeah, really relishing it.
Yeah, 4 months. Yeah, it's going to be mad. I love the Christmas time. We're just on the edge of it. Some interesting games coming up for Forest, not least starting with Arsenal on Saturday at 3. Arsenal, the benefit of them being a big club is they're on TV all the time. So we've seen quite a lot of them. So interesting to hear your thoughts on the season. What have you made of it in general so far?
Yeah, been a tricky start, and I think we're in a position that few would have really envisaged. Certainly in terms of the gap that we are from top spot at the moment. I think most people going into the season anticipated that we'd probably be City's closest challengers again, if not the team that went one step further this time. I think there have been a few mitigating factors and circumstances, not least the fact that we've struggled to keep 11 men on the pitch. But I think there's been, a quiet sort of descent actually towards the manager in recent weeks as well. It just a feeling that we're lacking that kind of attacking freedom and that the expression to play with the handbrake off a little bit at times. I think Martin Ødegaard's absence has been absolutely huge. And I think that is one sort of reason for encouragement heading into the next batch of fixtures, is that he obviously returned at Stamford Bridge just prior to the international break and was our man of the match by country mile. Played 90 plus minutes, having only just returned from his injury. And I think there's an optimism and a confidence that him being back in the team will hopefully unlock us going forward, because it's felt a little bit stodgy in attack for too long now. I think, part of the reason we signed Calafiori and Marino, even though those weren't attacking signings, I think part of that was to kind of unlock our left-hand side, because Martinelli was a player that we kind of lost last season. The season before that, he scored 15 goals, I think it was, in the Premier League. And I think there was an expectation that his trajectory would just continue to rise. And that's probably sort of broadly similar with us as a team. I think the expectation has been that we've got better season on season under Mikel Arteta, but progress isn't, always linear. And I think, we've had a little bit of a bump in the road, and now it's about how we respond in these next sort of, 9 or 10 matches heading into the new year, because I think by the time we get to sort of 19, 20 games in, there's no way we can be this far behind Liverpool at that point. I think we're going to have to narrow the gap in that period. They've got some difficult fixtures coming up. But so have Arsenal. I don't think Arsenal can look at Saturday's fixture and think that's going to be, a guaranteed 3 points in the current context of where Forest find themselves this season. So there are some nerves around this fixture from an Arsenal perspective, because it feels pretty much must win. It feels kind of season defining, which is a bit mad to say 12 games into a season, but that's the pressure that City and Liverpool put on you.
Yeah, we were discussing that last night, and whether it was something we could play on. I mean, you referenced there about the attack. Well, obviously, Arsenal's foundations were so strong last year; they kept clean sheet after clean sheet, and it feels like just watching them, those have gone a little bit. And we were saying last night, are Arsenal kind of scratching for attacking fluency, in the sense that Arteta's trying to be more attacking, but can't quite work out how to do it without Ødegaard, who is back, obviously. But has it been? I don't know what the word was. The word you used, stodgy. Is that what it's been?
Yeah.
They can't just find they can't click, basically.
That's it. And the number of games where it's felt like, and the Chelsea game was a case in point. We should have won that game. We were the better team, in my opinion. Not a lot in it, but I thought to go 1-0 up, I thought we had the game sort of in our control, and a sloppy moment lets it slip. But the point I raise, and if you actually look at the statistics, it will look like the defence is worse and the attack is, probably around the same kind of mark as it was last season. It will look from a statistical point of view that there's been a bigger drop off defensively, and I think there are reasons for that. But my issue with this team is I don't have the utmost confidence that we'll go and get 2, 3, 4, 5 in games where perhaps we ought to. Obviously Leicester and Southampton at home this season, 2 teams we expect to be, in the relegation battle this season, were 2 matches at home where we really dominated. And I think the XG in the Leicester game was like a record for us, and their keeper kept them in the game. So there have been instances where we've looked like making it tick, but that game at Chelsea would, a kind of a case in point for me, that it feels like the defence are constantly under pressure to keep a clean sheet, because we don't look like a team that will get more than 1 goal. We don't look like a team that I look at Liverpool, and to a lesser extent City at the moment, but even still, you look at the attacking personnel that they have, and you feel like a goal is inevitable in any game that they play in. I don't feel that inevitability with us, and certainly without Ødegaard. And people will debate who our sort of most important player is, and I think the squad that we have now compared to even 3 or 4 years ago is night and day from where we were. But I think the recent run has shown me that Ødegaard is the one that just knits it all together. He's the one who instigates the press at the top of the pitch. He makes Kai Havertz a better player as a result, because I think Havertz is somebody who almost needs that kind of orchestrator at the front of the pitch, needs someone to lead him and guide him. And I think him and Leandro Trossard have sort of dovetailed quite nicely during their Arsenal careers, but I don't think over an extended run of fixtures that combination has worked as we might have liked it to. I don't think it's got the same sort of determination in the press, the aggression in the press. I think that's an understated aspect of Ødegaard's play. I think people probably from the outside look at him as being, a really gifted technical playmaker, but he's actually got that work rate to his game, which I think, in turn impacts the likes of Saka and Martinelli in the press, and how high we can play up the pitch. So for me, in recent games, it's just demonstrated how pivotal he is to us. And again, there'll be some question marks raised over what we did in the summer and the decision to allow not just Emile Smith-Rowe to go to Fulham. That it looks like a bad decision on our part when he's scoring goals for Fulham, but it's also worth pointing out this is the first run of fixtures where he stayed fit in years. But also to let Fabio Vieira go. And if we didn't think he was necessarily the solution, I'm surprised that we didn't look to buy someone else in that mould that when Ødegaard is injured or needs a break, can play and sort of fill his creative role in the team. Obviously, Ethan Nwaneri looks like a real prospect for us, but he's only 17, and I don't think we should be putting enormous pressure on him to come and be the sort of creative sort of fulcrum of the team in Ødegaard's absence. So, yeah, I think, look, there have been a few factors why we've probably had a slightly tricky start to the season, but chief among them for me is the fact that we've really, really sorely missed Ødegaard.
Just on those injuries, I mean, we're calling this before Arteta speaks, but I think it's pretty pointless anyway. Regard what Arteta says. If he told me it was night, I'd think it was day when it comes to injuries. So I'm not going to take too much into that. But Saka, Rice, and Ben White seem like they're either out or doubts. Would you suspect that Saka and Rice will play in this one, and Ødegaard, but not White? Maybe I was reading earlier he might have had some surgery or something.
Yeah, I think Ben White's looking like he'll be a long-term absentee. Well, not long-term, but medium-term absentee. Some suggestions of sort of 10 to 12 weeks because of an operation he's had on a long-standing injury. it's funny because ahead of us playing Liverpool fans took it upon themselves to just mock us for this injury crisis that we created. But over the last few weeks, all I've seen on my timeline on social media is Liverpool fans talking about it. I don't actually think Arsenal fans even really referenced it, but it just became one of those things that snowballs on social media. But I think context is key, because Arteta said after the Chelsea game, we've got players here that can't play more than an hour. We've been struggling to field a consistent 11, yada, yada, yada. I won't go into the full details of the quotes, but I think the context aspect's the really key part of that for me. Ben White has clearly not been fully fit for a long time, but because people see his name on a team sheet, he's not treated as an injury as such. But actually, because of all our other defenders being on the sidelines for so long, Tomiyasu is somebody who just can't get fit, would be a really key part of our team if he could be. He's the ultimate squad player in terms of being able to play both fullback positions. He can play centre-half as well, but he's never fit. Zinchenko seems to have fallen way down the pecking order. Calafiori's had his injury troubles. Jurrien Timber obviously was out for, when Arsenal played Forest at the start of last season, suffered that injury that kept him out for almost the entirety of last year. So the context is key here, because even though we've got players that are technically available for selection, Declan Rice played with a broken toe at Chelsea and clearly wasn't fit enough to play 90 minutes. It had to be withdrawn on the 65 to 70 minute mark. It's very rare to see him go off before 90 minutes. So I think Arteta's quotes probably immediately in a social media age just get taken out of context and translated into something that people want them to be to suit their own agendas. But yeah, I personally think Saka and Rice will be available. I'd be surprised if they're not, given that they've had the break from the England camp. I suspect they've tried to just wrap them up in cotton wool for the last fortnight. I think the other question marks are Calafiori and Tomiyasu. Again, there are sort of positive noises around those two. So my expectation would be that the back four will be something like Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Calafiori at left back. Provided that obviously Gabriel played in the early hours of this morning for Brazil. So we'll have to see if he's, it comes back and is fresh and fit enough to play. But I would expect so. He's one of those players who just always seems to play. So yeah, it'll be a slightly different back four, and we're not really used to playing without Ben White for a sustained period. He's played an incredibly high number of minutes in the last three years since he signed for us. He's been an ever-present and probably one of our most underrated players, actually. So he'll be a miss, definitely. But really like Timber. I think he's someone who, again, is probably slightly underappreciated in the group. And he played at right back against Leicester earlier this season and did very well there. So interested to see how that goes and how that trio of Timber, Ødegaard and Saka will work, if that's what it is, on Saturday, because it's quite new. And I think that's going to be the theme of the lineup on Saturday. I suspect it's kind of some new partnerships around the team.
What would your full lineup be then? As we sit here now, it's Wednesday as we record this. What would your predicted 11 be?
Yeah, I think there's the fullbacks and the midfield are probably the interesting ones. I would expect. I mean, Davies, obvious selection in goal. Like I say, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Calafiori would be what I expect. There is the potential option, given he's played there in the past, for Partey to be at right back and invert, and then it'd be Calafiori, Gabriel, Saliba as a three. He could go with Partey or Rice at the base. He could go with Rice or Merino as the left eight. So it's that kind of configuration of the fullbacks and the defensive midfield and left eight that I think is going to be the selection queries, I think, really in the lineup. And then other than that, would expect it to be Ødegaard, Saka, Havertz and Martinelli. I wouldn't expect any other surprises. Martinelli didn't play the full 90. I think he played half an hour for Brazil, so would expect that he's probably, okay to play, even though he'll be reporting back slightly later than others. So, yeah, I think, again, part of the attacking problem for us has probably been that Raheem Sterling has been conspicuous by his absence, barely getting any minutes at the moment. Trossard has kind of come out of the 11 as Ødegaard's returned, and Gabriel Jesus is struggling to score. His last goal in the league was at Nottingham Forest way back in January, I want to say, in the 2-1 win at the City ground. So, at the moment, not regarded as somebody who Arteta sort of trusts to be in the first 11.
I watched, I think Sterling started against Southampton, I think. And as soon as he went off, you were a significantly better team. I can't even remember who. I think Trossard came on, and you were just way more dynamic. It's a bit sad to see how Raheem Sterling's fallen. Whether he gets back or not, I don't know. But he's been a bit of a stinker for you so far, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think for me the aspect of his game that is clearly lacking is the ability to go both ways. People marvel at what Saka and, to a lesser extent, Martinelli can do in the final third, but really why there's such prized assets on the wings for Arteta is they will do the dirty work and they'll get beyond the fullback going that way. And they'll help out in the defensive side of the game. And if you're not prepared to do that and you've not got the fitness levels, crucially, to be able to do that, then you're not going to be trusted to have a key role in this team. And I'm reading between the lines and speculating a little bit, but that's the impression I get with Sterling, is that he's just not been able to prove that sort of first team ready match fitness to Arteta yet. And the problem for him is because it's a year on loan, he's only got so long before it gets to a point where it's like, well, you're not going to ever be a fixture in this team. And, realistically, we're playing in 4 competitions over the next 3 months, 2.5 months, with the Carabao Cup tie against Palace in December, FA Cup third round at the start of January, and obviously Champions League resuming alongside the league campaign. So the idea that we're going to be able to just get by with Havertz, Saka, Martinelli as a front three it's not going to happen. We're going to have to rotate, and we are going to have to hope that Jesus and Sterling happen upon some form and they can contribute, because realistically we're going to need them. I think Arteta is often criticised for not rotating enough. I think you look sometimes at our European games and think, oh, maybe he'll bring out this player, and very rarely does he do that. He's been on record in the past of saying, of the likes of Saka, if you want to be a world-class player and you want to be regarded up there with the very best, you've got to be prepared to get your body in the kind of shape that it's going to be able to withstand 50, 60 games a season. Personally, I think there's too much football that players are being asked to play these days, but that's kind of the expectation. And Arteta kind of really trusts a core group of players, and at the moment, Sterling and Jesus are probably a couple of examples of people that fall slightly outside of that core group.
Just before I get Tom's thoughts on Forest, as we always do on these, just a quick word for the Trent navigation. A video, 15 seconds long, reminding you of the upcoming offer for the Man City game. So if you're listening, not watching, it's just to say December the 4th, when we go to Man City, discounted ale, discounted lagers, and £8.50 for pizzas at the Nav if you watch the game. I think they're all on TV, so you'll be able to watch that one down there. It's one of those, every game's on Amazon Weeks, I think. So yeah, look forward to that one. Right. What have you made of Forest so far, and what about them worries you, if anything, going into this one, Tom?
Really impressed. Really surprised, have to be honest. I kind of felt that Nuno would be it's always tended to end with how it ended at Wolves, and Spurs probably slightly more extreme example of how it ended there. But he's never quite made it work over a long-term period at clubs previously. And so I, hand on heart, have to say that I expected him to be one of the managers that maybe went this season. He's done an unbelievable job. I think he's assembled a group of players that can carry out tactical instructions to the letter. I'm being completely honest, I do worry heading into Saturday, because I think it's a game where Arsenal have to win, and Forest can go there as a little bit of a free hit, and probably is slightly reminiscent of Forest's trip to Anfield, where they knew that there was probably going to be more expectation. Liverpool had that good start, and it came to an abrupt halt with Forest going there, sitting in, saying to Liverpool, right, we'll see what you can do with your new sort of more possession-orientated game under Slot. And as it turned out, that was exactly the game plan, to kind of snuff them out and not give Mo Salah yards of space to run into behind him. Like, there've been some teams that have tried to take Liverpool on this season. Brighton, great example of that. Really brave, played really good football, and really should have made more of the chances that they had in the first half. But ultimately, they were done on the counter by Salah, and they left too much space in behind for him to work in. And I think that was the incredible thing about that Forest performance at Anfield, was it was so disciplined. And look, a 0-0 would have been an unbelievable result for Forest, if we're being honest, at the time. To get a 1-0 win, and was it first win in 50 odd years, I want to say, at Anfield?
Yeah, since the 60s in the league at Anfield, yeah.
So, to have a bit of a smash and grab, but I thought the game plan was executed perfectly. And obviously it's just kind of, maybe that was the catalyst to just take Forest on that run and give them that confidence to be able to maybe go away from home and have a setup that they can trust. They know that they've gone to one of the most difficult grounds in the country, and it's worked. So you lean into that game plan, and you probably trust it more as a result against other clubs. And I think they'll be emboldened to do exactly that on Saturday. And they've got the kind of pace and creativity on the counter that will cause us some issues. And if I do think our defence is still one of the strongest in the league, but somebody like Calafiori, as good as he is on the ball, I still haven't seen enough of him when he's been tested by a winger going at him. And I'm interested to see how he deals with sort of pacey, tricky wingers. Similarly, it's going to be a slightly, I wouldn't say makeshift, but it's going to be a slightly different setup at the back, I suspect, this weekend. So will we have that kind of coherence and understanding in the team to be able to deal with Forest's threats? I think in terms of what the game means for us and what it means for Forest, I think it's almost set up perfectly for Forest going into the game, because if we don't score early and it's looking, 0-0 at 50, 60 minutes, which is kind of what happened at Anfield, really, the crowd get a little bit antsy, and ours will definitely be, because we'll know that this weekend Liverpool go to Southampton. I think most people expect Liverpool to win there. So there is a need for us playing before City and Liverpool to put out a bit of a statement. And I think fans are expecting that. And I suspect that might work in Forest's favour, in being able to stay disciplined, stay compact, keep the shape, and make us have to pick a lock. I feel maybe a little bit more confident we can do that with Ødegaard in the team, and him and Saka's partnership sort of being rekindled. But we're the ones with something to prove right now, not Forest, and that's not it's not something I expected to say at the start of the season.
Yeah, we were talking about it last night. I think we said it was a case of need versus wants. Like, Arsenal absolutely need the points. Forest want the points, but if we don't get them, it's like, it's not the end of the world. But if you guys, even if you draw the game, it's looking a bit bleak in the title picture if Liverpool win, which I suspect they will. So yeah, you're right. Last thing I wanted to ask you about, Tom, before we let you go, is Edu. who has obviously left Arsenal or will leave Arsenal after his gardening leave or something like that. And he's probably going to join the Marinakis group and have a role at Forest, in a sense, an overarching role. We're all quite excited about it, but partly because it's a coup and it's a big name. He's got a really big reputation. But I haven't actually spoke to anyone from Arsenal particularly to find out what the feeling there at that end is, apart from reading on social media. What have you made of Edu's tenure in terms of the recruitment and everything that he did while he was there?
I think he's been brilliant for us, really do. I don't think you can. There's a fine line between leaning into sort of club legends and, you know, the kind of give it gigs till the end of the season sort of thing with clubs, and, you know, maybe giving them jobs that they're not qualified for necessarily. But I think what we've had in Arteta, Edu, and Mertesacker as a kind of a trio across the first team, Edu having a more holistic view of all things Arsenal, including the women's team, and Per Mertesacker running the academy, is you've had that kind of through line of people that know the club. Arteta and Mertesacker sort of joined us at our lowest ebb, because they joined us after the 8-2 at Old Trafford. And while they might not be regarded as sort of legends in the sense of Henry, Bergkamp, Vieira, they're kind of those kind of unheralded people who would run through a brick wall for the football club. And Edu was like that in the Invincibles team as well. He was somebody who didn't get the adulation that everyone else did, but he was someone who really sort of bought into the club and the ethos and what it means to represent Arsenal during his playing time here. And I think all three of them have really tried to get the fans more aligned with the club. Arteta was probably sort of primary instigator for reuniting the fan base with the club, but you don't have to go too far back to think. I think we lost 3-0 to Manchester City at home in late 2019. So probably 5-year anniversary of that approaching. And there were empty seats everywhere. During COVID, there were protests against the ownership. And that feels like a long, long time ago now. And Edu has played a massive part in that. Obviously, on pitch, success and improvement is what will ultimately dictate that. It is really quite that simple. But I think the way that he's allowed Arteta to kind of build the team in his image, whilst also being somebody who gives a lot of interviews to mainstream media, in-house interviews. It's not felt like this ivory tower situation that we probably quite often had when Arsene Wenger was here, where you heard from Wenger, he was the spokesperson for all things at the football club, and you didn't really have any association or identity with those above him. We've not had that with Edu. It's felt like a kind of a two-pronged, three-pronged attack in terms of the representation of the football club. And I think having that sort of public-facing figure who's happy to speak and engage with fans and media is really important, and something that I would expect him to continue in his role at Forest. I think in terms of talent spotting, we've obviously brought through players like Ben White, David Raya, Aaron Ramsdale, Tommy Yasu, Gabriel, trying to think of others, Martin Odegaard. There've been some real success stories from the tenure. There have been players that were inherited from the previous regime as well, but bearing in mind that we went from somebody in Raul Sanllehi who was very in bed with the agents, and we ended up with players like Cedric Suarez on a 4-year deal as a result, and couldn't flog him for life nor death. It was refreshing to see somebody come in who had contacts around global football and clearly knew clearly new different kind of networks to tap into and exploit to, either get us players or get us speaking to the right people to then get certain players. I think I got the impression always that we were well connected without being, as I said earlier, too in bed with the agents, which is exactly what Raul Sanllehi was, and kind of was outspoken about that. The Nicola Pepe deal, prime example of that. He was somebody who he knew through George Mendes, and I think there was a want to kind of wow the fan base and make a statement in European football, and that transfer cost us years, really, 3-4 years before we got back to, I think he signed in 2019, Pepe, and it wasn't until sort of 2022 that we were really recovered and went again as a football club. So that transfer was probably sort of emblematic of Sanllehi's time at the club, and I think more smarter additions like Ødegaard have been more emblematic of what Edu's done for us, where somebody who was sort of discarded at Real Madrid and had to rebuild his career has kind of finally found the home, struck a loan deal and then paid 30 million for him, which, you look at what Ødegaard would be worth in this market nowadays. And I think that's been one of the big things for me as well, is bringing players in and increasing their transfer value. William Saliba was, again, technically prior to the regime, but he wouldn't be worth what he is now as one of the leading defenders in world football without being part of an overall group that have improved season on season under Arteta, and Edu has a big role to play in that. I think the only sort of cautionary note I'd sound on him is probably until this summer, Arsenal fans have always sort of been frustrated with our inability to sell effectively and efficiently as a football club, and Arsenal and Nottingham Forest at the moment are two different entities in that sense, in the markets they're looking to sell perhaps, and the amount of money for players and that type of thing. But until Smith Rowe went to Fulham, and I think this is the irony of what I mentioned earlier, I think most Arsenal fans regarded that as a good sale at the time, probably a move that benefited all parties in all honesty. But really before that, you'd have to work hard and squint a little bit to find maybe a successful sale under Edu. And I think part of being a successful sort of director of football operations, which Edu was for us, is being able to maybe have the foresight to sell a player early before they clearly become damaged goods. And maybe there was an aspect to that with Smith Rowe. We obviously got a decent price for him in the end, but we wasted 2 seasons of his career really by just not giving him enough football after his breakthrough. And I think we probably, have a reputation still in the market for not being sort of tough negotiators and not particularly effective sellers. Bernd Leno going to Fulham for some mad structured fee of like an initial 5 million down payment with a series of add-ons for at the time, German international goalkeeper, was mad to me when we signed him for best part of 20 million. So there are probably, it's probably the one question mark that I had on Edu in his time at Arsenal. But I think in terms of what he's brought into the club in terms of personnel, and also what he's done to bring the different departments of the football club closer together, work in a more holistic way, remove the kind of, the bureaucracy that existed maybe across departments of the football club, I think, has really been commendable. And I would say he's been a success story, and it's ultimately a blow for us, him going to, manage the Forest, the Marinakis group, because we're now in a situation where we haven't got someone in place ahead of the January window. So there's an aspect of, going into the unknown, heading into January. You would imagine that summer transfer window planning will be a conversation sooner rather than later as well. So we're in a position where we need to get the appointment right, but we also need to do it fairly quickly, because I don't think it's one that we can just get by with. I think Jason Ato, who was Edu's deputy essentially at Arsenal, is kind of taking on some additional duties at the minute. And I think we're going to have to act fairly swiftly to get someone in, because Edu's role was sort of all encompassing, really. And he's going to be a big blow for us. It's going to have an impact on us in the short term, definitely. And I'm interested to see what he does in the new role, because I think there was maybe some surprise in some quarters that he could be tempted away, from a team that have been the closest challengers to City in the last couple of years. But to be able to be across a different network of clubs, and saw a suggestion yesterday that Marinakis is looking into a Brazilian club as well. It makes sense that he might want to take that next step in his career and have that kind of, be able to use that kind of holistic approach that he's had at Arsenal across multiple different football clubs. So really interested to see how he gets on. And I think it's an exciting addition for Forest. I know it's not just Forest, but Forest will be implicated in it in some way. So I think it's a really intriguing one, and I'd be excited if I was a Forest fan.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing that. Well, a lot of what you said, especially the stuff around, finding talent, not being, too in bed with agents, fits with what we've done in the last year or so with Murillo and Carlos Miguel, who hasn't played so much, and Danilo and a few other players. Because historically, we were the club that was the agent's dream until, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or a year ago or whatever. So hopefully Edu fits in with that mould and keeps progressing everything in the right direction, which it is at the moment. Right. If you have enjoyed that, as ever, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe. You can sign up for YouTube membership or Patreon, whichever you prefer, and give us a lovely 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. Tom, thank you very much. Good luck for the game. You're a good bloke, but I hope you lose and it completely derails your title run. But good luck for the rest of the season after that. You can win the Champions League and the FA Cup instead this season.
I'll take it. Thanks very much for having me. And hopefully, I've got no idea off the top of my head when the return fixture is, but be great to link up again then.
We shall do that. Right. Have a good day, everyone. We'll be back post-match at about 5:30, I think, to discuss how it all goes, and then back again on Monday. Right. If we don't see you then, hopefully we shall see you soon.